Hey film fans, welcome to CinePro. Your ultimate hub for all movie recaps, from heartwarming classics to the latest blockbusters. At the beginning of our movie, we find that Jack starts his day with his daily dose of weed, but he can't turn on the lighter because it's broken. So he decides to go to his neighbor to help him, but his neighbor doesn't open the door for him. So Jack is forced to open the door and go out while walking in the street, not realizing that there are no humans outside, and he doesn't suspect anything until he finds two bodies thrown in the garden. From their appearance, it's clear they've started decomposing. When he tries to call an ambulance, he can't, as his phone has no signal. He then decides to visit his family to check on them. Unfortunately, when he arrives at his father's house, he finds that his entire family has died, including his little sister Megan. The smell churns his stomach, and he rushes back to the street, trying to snap himself out of it, convinced that everything he's seeing is just a hallucination caused by whatever he's been consuming. At that moment, a boy named Sam appears on a bike and assures Jake that everything happening is real and not a delusion. He explains that everyone who was asleep at a specific time died, and the only survivors are those who, for some reason, couldn't sleep. To stay alive, they must remain awake and avoid sleep at all costs. To achieve this, they inject themselves with adrenaline. Later, while cleaning a swimming pool, they find two girls who are also alive because they were consuming substances that kept them awake. They all agree to look out for one another. After a few days, they begin to feel the toll of their new reality. One of the girls starts losing her sanity. To keep Sam awake, Jake tries to engage him in conversation, and the two joke about how one day they'll become sharks that won't need sleep. The humor lightens the mood but doesn't solve their problem. When they return to the house, they find that the girl who had been talking to herself earlier couldn't hold on and fell asleep. When Jake tries to inject her with adrenaline, it's too late. She's already dead. Her friend breaks down. Over time, even drugs and coffee stop helping. The remaining girl becomes terrified of falling asleep, just like what happened to Rachel. Worse still, their drug supply begins to run out. They realize that once it's gone, they'll have to face their fate. In desperation, the girl consumes all the remaining drugs, takes the car, and drives away. This leaves Jake and Sam with only a few hours to live. The boys take another car to chase after her, but Jake starts to doze off while driving. Sam has to take over and tries to wake Jake up. Searching the car for something to help, he finds a screwdriver and stabs Jake in the leg to jolt him awake. Even with the screwdriver in his leg, Jake remains delirious, hallucinating that Megan is driving the car. Instead of seeing a plane in the sky, he imagines a meteor like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs millions of years ago. Sam continues the pursuit alone. At that moment, the plane in the sky crashes onto the road ahead of them. The shock brings Jake back to his senses. They find Ellis, the plane's owner, who is surprised to see survivors but agrees to give them some of his drugs in exchange for being taken to a hospital where he needs to retrieve medical supplies. After reaching the hospital, the group splits up. Ellis heads inside while Jake and Sam search for a pharmacy. Finding nothing helpful there, they join Ellis in the hospital. To their surprise, the hospital is full of people. Dr. Ellie explains that the survivors are using IV fluids to stay awake as they search for answers and try to understand what's happening. While examining documents, Ellis discovers the exact times of death for the patients who died in their sleep. He learns that the catastrophe occurred simultaneously worldwide, with only a 1-minute difference, and originated in Colorado. Ellis becomes determined to travel to the source of the event, convinced it's the only way to understand what happened and possibly find a cure. Ellie and her friend decide to join him, unwilling to stay in the hospital. Hearing this, Sam asks Ellis to take them along as well, though Jake is less enthusiastic about the idea. In a flashback, Ellie remembers the chaos at the hospital when they discovered numerous patients dead. The clinic's director instructed the staff to contact other hospitals to understand the situation. Looking out the window, Ellie saw her friend Lex driving away without telling anyone. The group then takes the fastest car they can find to reach the nearest city. This time, the only thing keeping them awake is a chili pepper Sarah brought from the hospital. They finally arrive at another hospital, only to find it burned down, meaning there are no records to help them determine the timing of the patients' deaths. They are forced to continue their journey to another city, but none of them are confident they can endure such a trip without sleeping. Jake recalls another place in the country where they might find the information they need, the morgue behind the police station. When they arrive, they are shocked to find a party with a crowd of people. They decide to head to the director's office, but an annoying security guard stops them. Ellis deals with him to gain access. Meanwhile, Sarah stays outside, telling her friend she needs to join the party for a bit to stay awake. Jake offers to stay with her to keep an eye on her, assuring Ellie they won't leave Sarah alone and will join them soon. While dancing, Ellis and Ellie search through the records but find nothing documenting the times of death. Ellie notices a laptop in the office, giving her hope they might find some clues. Outside, Jake keeps an eye on Sarah, but after drinking, he starts hallucinating, imagining he sees his little sister Megan. He chases after her, oblivious to what he's doing. Meanwhile, Ellie asks Sam to hack into the laptop, unaware that her friend is now standing alone. Finally, the team finds the data and discovers that the patients in this hospital died at 4:02 a.m., meaning the catastrophe didn't start here. They realize they need to travel again. At that moment, Sarah notices Jake is missing and searches for him in the crowd. However, Jake is lost in his own world, thinking he's talking to his little sister. Family memories and the time his parents separated flood his mind. On the other side, when they calculate it, they determine the place where this disaster began. And to understand the reason, they deduce that they need to travel to Dallas, which is an hour and a half away. Afterward, Sam struggles to find Jack and brings him back to consciousness. At that moment, Jake realizes Sarah is missing, and when they find her, it's already too late because she fell asleep amidst the chaos. Ellie argues with Jake about his recklessness and refuses to take him with her. Elise sides with her, but Sam defends Jake, saying that if his friend doesn't go with them, he will stay and die with him. This forces the doctor to agree, and they get into the car and continue their journey. While on the road, they change their plan because Ellie translates a message from her friend Lex, who said she's inviting anyone interested to Austin to get the treatment. Elise refuses to change their route and go with Ellie, but gives her a radio so they can stay in touch. Jake and Sam decide to go with her, and Jake admits he was wrong because she lost her friend. He wants to stay with her to make up for his impact. After many sleepless days, people are severely affected. Some go completely insane, while others, who were just regular employees the day before, turn into killers by the fourth day because they find that killing is the only thing keeping them awake. Later, Jack is driving and plays a silent acting game with Sam to stay alert. But as they're traveling peacefully, someone suddenly falls on them from above. This accident causes Ellie to lose consciousness, and the group applies alcohol to her face to wake her up. While Sam searches the car for water, he notices someone standing on the bridge but can't see him clearly. He grabs the water bottle and returns to his friends. At that moment, Ellie starts experiencing a concussion, and her condition worsens. Jack decides to look for a new car since there's no one else on the road. Meanwhile, Elise continues his journey, struggling to stay awake while driving. He nearly has an accident several times but manages to control himself, gets out to move around, and listens to his old recordings, which motivate him to keep going. On the other side, Ellie, Jake, and Sam walk under the blazing sun and become severely exhausted. When they reach a village along their path, they hear music, giving them hope of finding people to help them. Jake goes to investigate the source of the music and follows it to a garden with hanging skulls and people running around in strange clothing. At that moment, Ellie collapses and loses consciousness. The last thing she sees is someone wearing a black cloak, terrifying her. Later, they take her to a strange building filled with odd people and an old woman resembling a witch who gives her something to drink. Ellie finally wakes up and opens her eyes to find Jake and Sam in front of her, acting completely normal and unafraid of what's happening. It turns out they've arrived at a hospital run by a priest named Julio. The priest introduces them to the young people there and explains that since they don't know what the future holds, they decided to celebrate the Day of the Dead. That's why they're wearing the strange outfits. He tells them that the dose given to Ellie is a herbal concoction prepared by his father, and thanks to it, they've been able to stay awake for several days without going insane or experiencing any adverse effects. He then gives them a tour of the place and introduces Sam to Carmen, a girl his age. While Ellie is being treated by Julio's father, Carmen takes Sam to show him the nice spots around the area and tells him about an old blind man who managed to survive with his dog. However, one day, the dog starts barking loudly, and the man tells it to go to a safe place. While walking, Sam shares his journey with Carmen, explaining that they're searching for a cure for this problem. At that moment, a deranged killer attacks them, injuring Carmen. When Sam tries to defend her, the killer looks at him and prepares to attack, but Carmen's screams alert the others. Julio and his men arrive to rescue Carmen and Sam. When Ellie examines Carmen, she finds her injuries are severe, and they're forced to perform surgery without anesthetics or sedatives, because if she falls asleep, she'll die. Ellie tries to stay calm and begins the operation with Sam assisting her. Meanwhile, Jake, overwhelmed by all the problems, steps outside and promises to guard the entrance. While his friends save Carmen, He grabs a metal pipe and searches for the killer. The rest of the men also scour the area, hoping to find and kill him. However, some of them fall victim to the deranged man, who is willing to do anything to stay awake. While Sam distracts Carmen with a game, Ellie stitches up her wound. Suddenly, the lights go out. Julio steps out to investigate and promises to turn on the generator. The doctor waits for him to fix the problem so she can continue the operation. But at that moment, they hear the sound of gunfire and realize it's not just a malfunction. The killer has cut the power, and Julio is now in danger. Ellie takes Carmen to another room to continue the surgery by candlelight, talking to her to ensure she doesn't fall asleep. Suddenly, the deranged man appears before them. The doctor tries to protect the children, noticing that the killer has a severe injury. She hopes he'll lose consciousness before harming anyone, but it seems his injury doesn't faze him. He screams loudly and prepares to kill them. Just in time, Jake arrives and kills him. When the priest and his assistant arrive, they find the killer dead. Ellie finally finishes the operation, and Julio, grateful for their help, gives them his car and a large supply of the herbal concoction to keep them awake during their journey. When Ellie offers Julio to join them, he declines, saying he's needed there and that some people who went exploring the area never returned. Carmen asks Sam to stay with her, but he tells her he can't leave his friends, promising to return once they find the cure. After saying their goodbyes, the group continues their journey. Meanwhile, Elise reaches a city filled with lights, seemingly untouched by the disaster. Despite all the challenges, there are still people trying to live normal lives. In the next scene, we meet a man named Bill, who invites his girlfriend Nicole on a date. Afterward, the two of them go to a famous cafe. After they finish, they stop at a gas station to fill up the car. When Nicole sees someone still alive, she waves at him excitedly. But at that moment, someone starts shooting from the rooftop and the man dies in front of them. Bill and Nicole hide behind the car, unsure of what to do. Then Bill notices someone signaling them with a flashlight. After counting to 3, they run simultaneously toward that person while the sniper continues trying to shoot them. Both manage to escape and find themselves in a hideout with Ellis. Ellis confesses that he saw the bodies at the city gate and had been trying to avoid the sniper all along. Now he is in a safe place with other people gathered around him in an abandoned garage. Later, someone offers Nicole an adrenaline shot, but Bill refuses to take it. No one notices, assuming he relies on something else. The group then asks Nicole and Bill why they came to Dallas. Nicole admits that she wanted to visit the famous cafe before she died, but her idea doesn't impress Ellis. He tells her and her husband to stop focusing on the end and suggests they join forces. Ellis believes that if they work together, they might find a cure. But before starting their search, Ellis decides to confront the sniper, preventing them from moving freely in the city. Meanwhile, Ellie and the group reach their destination, but something strange happens near the clinic. Mean to hurt anyone and explains that many people have gone mad, prompting her to cleanse the city of criminals. Back at the clinic, the guards are surprised to see the group arriving without clothes. Not only do they ask unnecessary questions, but they also demand entry. Ellie claims she knows Lex, and at that moment, Ellis captures Meredith and takes her to the camp. However, she outsmarts them, takes a hostage, and demands to join their team, proposing that they work together to uncover the origins of the disaster. If they refuse, she threatens to kill everyone and return to her previous actions. Ellis reluctantly agrees to her terms. The group resumes their mission, and Ellie finally reunites with her friend Lex. The two are overjoyed to see each other, though Ellie expresses her anger over Lex leaving without saying goodbye. They argue about what happened, but eventually, Ellis and the group gather to get to know each other better, sharing their stories. The most peculiar story comes from Jeffrey, who came to Dallas searching for a specific bird species, which is why he is still alive. Bess also shares an unusual tale, revealing that someone warned her about the disaster minutes before it happened. She doesn't know who sent the message, but the code traced back to Dallas, prompting her to investigate the person who saved her. When Jeffrey tries to locate the source of the number, he finds the internet unresponsive. Bill steps in to help, using an old phone directory to discover the call came from a nursing home. The group heads there immediately, only to find everyone dead and the place reeking. Meredith notices a camera and reviews the footage until they reach the day of the disaster, but they can't find the exact moment the call was made. They deduce that the caller intentionally avoided being seen on camera. Something catches Bill's attention. A warning about the disaster appeared on screens at the same moment people began dying, suggesting the announcement was recorded at the time. Meredith recalls a nearby TV station and suggests they go there to uncover the truth. Bill notices Nicole starting to drift off but wakes her just in time and injects her with adrenaline. Bill and Nicole decide to separate from the group and head to the bakery Nicole has been dreaming of for a long time. Meredith pulls out a gun, pointing it at Bill, realizing he hasn't taken anything to stay awake and doesn't seem tired. Bill confesses he has been unwell for months and has a rare disease. He plans to use his condition to ensure his beloved spends her last days happily. At the clinic, Lex introduces Ellie and the group to a substance they developed. While not a cure, the medicine allows patients to sleep without dying. She explains that scientists discovered people die during deep sleep and found a way to prevent it. The first person they test the treatment on is Sam. Despite Jake's objections, Lex injects Sam, who immediately closes his eyes. Meanwhile, Bill and Nicole reach the bakery. Bill breaks the glass to enter and offers Nicole the pastries inside. After fulfilling their desires, they go to an empty cinema, watch a film, and prepare to say goodbye. Nicole thanks Bill for the lovely day, rests her head on his shoulder, and falls asleep. Back with Sam, he dreams of a nightmare, reliving his last conversation with his father. It's revealed they were very close, and Sam still struggles with his father's death. Lex admits this is a side effect of the drug, which induces sleep but doesn't protect against nightmares. Elsewhere, Ellis and his group enter the TV station where they are blinded by a strong spotlight and hear a recorded voice threatening to shoot. They realize it's the voice of a broadcaster named Alonso, claiming he isn't going anywhere. An old man emerges, turns off the spotlight, and steps out to meet the group. Meanwhile, Jake takes a syringe filled with the substance, preparing to sleep. The moment he closes his eyes, he dreams of Sarah and Megan. At that time, Lex and Ellie are watching Jake and notice him suddenly struggling, his heart stopping. The doctors act quickly to save him. Shortly after, Sam also begins to lose consciousness, but Lex cannot revive him. Fortunately, we discover it's all just a nightmare she's having. When she wakes up, she finds the group is fine, eating and joking. Meanwhile, Ellis interrogates the old man, but Alonso can't respond and tells him who sent the signal. According to him, on that day, Alonso arrived late to work because his wife had died, and he had to bury her. During their conversation, Ellis realizes Alonso has lost his mind because he refuses to leave the studio, even though all the viewers have died. Despite the tragedy, the man refuses to believe the catastrophe, even though his team is gone, leaving him alone. Ellis then asks him to show the location of the power generator, suspecting that the signal might be a type of wave causing people's deaths. Alonso doesn't like this idea, but seeing Ellis's determination, he reluctantly agrees to help. Meanwhile, Lex introduces the group to her mentor, Dr. Arams, confessing she considers him a genius and believes he's the one who can save the world. Back to Ellis. Alonso takes the group to the basement to search for the power generator and explains how to cut the power. However, Ellis notices the man is stalling and trying to distract them. Alonso then claims there are safe sleeping zones unaffected by the strange phenomenon and suggests they rest there. When asked about these places, he fails to provide answers. Suddenly, Alonso locks them in the control room, sealing the doors behind him. He reminds them he'll never abandon his important work for their plans. Meanwhile, Lex shows her friends photos of people involved in the treatment experiments. At the same time, Jack discovers a fish tank in the clinic filled with sharks, creatures they once wished to emulate at the start of the crisis. Back to Ellis, he observes Alonso reviving himself with cigarettes, confirming the man has lost it. Ellis distracts him while the others try to escape the control room and open the doors. Out of nowhere, Joe confronts Alonso and tries to kill him, but Alonso ends up killing Joe in front of his wife. Ellis realizes they're dealing with a very dangerous man. At the clinic, Dr. Aram sends a team to the city to bring back more survivors, revealing he uses these people for treatment experiments, indifferent to their consent. In the city, two men prepare their weapons for another raid. One of them, named Clay, refuses to take any stimulants, explaining that after his son's death, all he wants is revenge on those responsible. His anger keeps him alert. Meanwhile, Jeffrey finds a way in the tech department to restore power and open the doors. At this moment, Alonso rambles, attempting to justify his actions. Suddenly, the lights come back, and the doors open. At that moment, Ellis enters the studio and kills Alonso live on air. Jeffrey cuts the power again, but this time disables the satellites transmitting the signal, shutting down screens nationwide. Now there's only one thing left, to see if the plan worked, and if they can finally sleep. Jeffrey recalls the day he and his friends saw a living crow, which prompted him to travel to Dallas, feeling it was a sign. Now Jeffrey is convinced the time has come. He volunteers to test the theory by attempting to sleep after turning off the TV signal. Ellis tries to stop him, but Jeffrey insists, believing it's his responsibility. He places a pillow under his head, closes his eyes, and falls asleep. After a while, the group realizes the plan failed. They can't wake Jeffrey, not even with adrenaline. At this point, Jake talks to Ellie, reminding her of Ellis and wondering where he is and what he's doing now. Ellie says she feels he's still alive and close to solving the mystery. Meanwhile, the girl sent to find people for the treatment encounters Clay, who captures and interrogates her, learning how to infiltrate the clinic. Meanwhile, the scientists continue their experiments. Sam watches her work, and after gaining his trust, she convinces him to meet Dr. Abrams. At this point, Lex breaks down after Jeffrey's death, saying she's exhausted and ready to sleep. Meredith tries to stop her, but she also gives up. Meanwhile, Sam meets Dr. Abrams and observes him working. When the doctor suggests Sam participate in the experiments, Sam agrees. Elsewhere, John theorizes they were on the right track, but shutting down the satellites from the studio wasn't enough. To complete the mission, they need to travel to NASA's space station and disable the satellites there to prevent any signals from reaching Earth. Ellis proposes this plan to Meredith and Lex, but they believe John had died earlier and that the recent interaction was a hallucination. They urge Ellis to abandon the idea and join them at the best hotel in Dallas to rest and end their suffering. Meanwhile, Jack searches the clinic for Sam and discovers a storage area with patient belongings. Among the boxes, he finds a mask he had seen before at Juan's church, realizing he hadn't seen anyone from the church at the clinic. At the same time, Ellie notices something strange. All the photos Lex showed her are of children. She confronts Lex, demanding an explanation, but Lex feigns ignorance. At that moment, Jake enters and explains to Ellie what's happening at the clinic. Realizing Sam is in danger, Jake goes to great lengths to find him. He enters the lab just as Abrams prepares the vaccine to inject into the boy. Abrams confronts Jake and Ellie, holding a syringe filled with sedative, refusing to let Sam go. He argues that without this, they can't overcome the crisis and insists Ellie should support him, believing she understands his position. However, Ellie and Jake manage to rescue Sam from the doctor. When Ellie learns that Lex sent Sam to the doctor, she explodes in anger and cuts ties with her. At that moment, they hear the alarm sounded because armed men broke into the building, and everyone started looking for a place to hide. Fajag takes advantage of this opportunity and takes Eli and Sam towards the exit. On their way, they encounter Clay, but when he sees the little boy with them, he lets them go. Afterward, he demands that they hand over Dr. Abrams. At that moment, the doctor comes out to him and convinces him to lower his weapon. As soon as Clay does so, Abrams injects him with the solution he had prepared for Sam. Within seconds, Clay's heart stops, and he dies. The doctor then announces that the substance still isn't working. When Lex tries to stop them from escaping, Eli assures Jack that she can convince her friend to let them go. Eli gets out of the car to talk to her, but Lex points a gun at her and tells her to return to the clinic and hand over Sam. At that moment, Jake intervenes and helps Eli get back into the car, and they drive away from the area completely. Meanwhile, we see Elias recording a message for Jake, Eli, and Sam, confessing that he can no longer control himself and has decided to surrender today and finally rest. After finishing the recording, he lies down on the bed. We also see Murtis and Bass lying down as well, thanking each other for everything they've experienced together before falling asleep. And with that, we reach the end of the first season. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all new updates. See you in the next video.